been able to kind of have that sense of like, this is not we're running out of money and I can't pay rent next month and I'm ringing the oil truck and kind of going, can you do a smaller delivery because we literally don't have money in our bank account to be able to pay for oil for heating for the house. And that's where it kind of got to for us. We're literally going to run out of money in the next couple of months, which is also one of those reasons why I took that role. And I was like, okay, I actually just need to get back into the real world now.
Hello and welcome back to Day One Diaries, the podcast where we speak to founders about starting something new and what that experience is really like. We have a different episode for you today as we talk to Tim Byrne. Tim is currently the CTO of a company called Asora, but our conversation goes back to an earlier chapter when Tim left a nice, secure 12-year role to start a company called Juggle with two friends. We talk about where the idea came from, how they built the business, and ultimately how they had to wind it down. The thing for me about this conversation is how Tim looks at this now and what that startup experience meant for his career going forward. He talks about what it did for his perspective, expanding his skills, and giving him confidence to go into the workplace and move through many industries. It's a story of risk, it's a story of career change, but really it's a story of long-term return on stepping out of your lane. I really enjoyed this episode and I hope you do too. And remember, hit subscribe to get the latest from Day One Diaries. Welcome, Tim. Good to see you on Day One Diaries. How are you doing today?
Oh, good. Thanks for having me, Brian. Much appreciated.
Oh, pleasure to have you. Pleasure to have you. Now, Tim, you and I have known each other for a very long time, and there's things that we have seen and done together that we probably won't talk about on this podcast. But what I do want to talk about is your experience starting your own business and how that has gone for you over the years. So before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about yourself and what are you doing now?
Yeah. So again, thanks for having me on. It's great. It's good to see you, by the way. We haven't seen each other in a little while, but yeah, let's not do that other podcast or a few of us that end up in very hot water. Yeah, I'm currently based in Dublin. I've been in Dublin the whole time anyway, but working with a fintech company called Asora. Asora basically gathers and aggregates financial data for family offices and high net worth individuals. So often, wealthy people will have lots of assets and investments all around the world, businesses, properties, various financial instruments, and they struggle to kind of pull all of that information together, understand where it is. Zora is a fintech platform that basically takes all of the pain out of that and generally keep a track on their finances. So I've been there for about 6 months now.
Okay.
It's startup slash scale up. So they've been around for a while before I joined, but really kind of moving into the phase now of scaling up, acquiring customers, building out the product, building the team out. So yeah, it's been a wild 6 months.
Excellent. Wow. I'd say plenty we could talk about in there, but I want to take us back to the past because a few years ago, you went down the startup route and the founder route yourself and started a business called Juggle. Can you take us back to that and what was the business that you started?
Yeah, so I'll go back maybe one step further to give the context. So straight out of college, I joined a company called Murex. Murex would be world leaders of providing financial applications into capital markets. So basically, the software that banks use to trade and manage their risk. So I was about 12 years in that company, made a lot of good friends, still have those friends today. And a few of us were constantly discussing how we were paid reasonably well in that company, but we were always broke. And so essentially, the way we looked at it was we just didn't have time to properly manage our money. Like we had good incomes coming in, but at the end of every month, it was all gone because we just didn't have the time or the headspace or the technology in our perspective to be able to just manage where everything was coming and going from, where we were spending our money, what was being saved, what was being invested, etc. Um, So we kind of came together a few times and had several discussions around it. Seems bizarre given the fact that we're working in a company that builds technology to help banks essentially predict and manage finances, predict risk, for example. I was in the risk area, understand where everything is going and what's happening. That concept couldn't be brought into your personal finances, which is why can't you simply aggregate all of your financial data in one place, get a clean picture of where you are, project forward where things are going, understand where you can reduce your spending, understand where you can save money, how you can get yourself out of debt, all these things which we know we should do, but nobody really does them because people don't like finance.
Yeah.
It's scary, it's big, it's complex, and we're of the opinion that well, it isn't really if you can build the right software to simplify all of that down into simple actions and things for people to do regularly and build good habits in your financial area. So the idea that was born out of that was to basically build a financial well-being application, something that would pull all of your data into one place, understand all of that data, and essentially start to build those habits and set out those pictures for you of, hey, I'm deeply in debt at the moment, I'm misusing credit cards, whatever it could be. How do I get from place A to place B? And your app, your phone, every day would just nudge you along and help you and go, you're on track. At the end of this month, you're not going to be in deficit. So that's really good. Or if you are going to be in deficit, what's a better way to manage that? Could we do a little bridging loan, for example, to cover that over so you're not paying exuberant rates to the banks? Flip your credit card debt into something else so that again you can manage your payments. So all the things that you kind of hear about and you know about, but enshrined in software. So you can do it quickly with a few taps of a button on your phone, as opposed to having to understand the complexity of all the finance behind that. So that was the idea. So
Sounds
we,
awesome. I actually, to be honest, I think we should go for
I'm not going again.
it. Genuinely though, it is. I think, and I am excited to hear the rest of the story unfold. But I think it really hits on something. Irish listeners will remember the "I don't know what a tracker mortgage is" ad, and it's that point. It is this asymmetry of knowledge in the finance world that you know essentially was capitalized on by a lot of people and continues to be. So if you can level up people's knowledge or access to that information and take away the stigma of, oh my god, I don't know, someone else might know more than me here. It seems like a very sensible thing to do. So I can really see where the idea came from and why you guys wanted to chase it up. So you guys were plotting and planning this, no doubt, in very structured boardroom style meetings is where this idea came together. So what happened? Did you obviously went for it? How did that come about?
Yeah, so as I said, there was three of us working in Murex at the time together. We'd socialize a lot together as well, and then we just basically said, look, we can procrastinate about this forever, or we can really put something into action and get us to a decision point. So we started taking Saturdays, spending Saturdays together in various houses and drawing out what this would look like. And it was all very exciting. We were going to conquer the world. We were going to take over everyone. We were going to be billionaires overnight. That initial euphoria was great. It got grounded quite quickly when we started getting into doing some proper research around competitors in the markets, hearing some stories of businesses that were already doing similar things out there. And it's like you think you've got, the only idea of this in the world, but then you suddenly realize lots of smart people out there have had similar ideas too. And we're taking interesting approaches on it as well. Some of them are still around today. Um, and yeah, we just got to a point whereby we kind of felt that each of us had been in Murex around the same amount of time, give or take 10, 14 years. And I think we all felt like we just wanted to do something fresh, something with our own kind of stamp on it, our autonomy, kind of steer our own destiny as opposed to, working in a big company forevermore. We also all kind of felt that it was one of those things which you just got to rip the plaster and go for it. And we felt and believed we were the age profile where it's the right time to do it in terms of families and all that stuff like that, the risk that we were taking on. So there was lots of things went into the decisions around doing it. There was the comfort of doing it with two mates. There's a trust in there and an understanding of each other's strengths and weaknesses, which is great. One of the guys, Owen, was a previous founder and had a successful exit from his company. So he had the concept of the startup world, which we obviously didn't, but brought other things to the table. Um, but yeah, we basically took a lot of Saturdays in a row, and eventually we just made a decision. We said, right, that's it, we're going for this. And all three of us basically handed in our notice over a period of a few months, and set up shop and got an office space and kicked things off from there and started to hire a few people. We 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 fully funded it ourselves as well. That's the other thing. We decided we weren't going to go out and start to look for funding. What we were going to do is put our own money into it, to get things off the ground, to start building things, and then we would start looking for investment. While we were working in the company, knowing that we had a runway of, I think, maybe 18 months along the way.
Right, right. Okay. Okay. So you'd obviously managed your finance reasonably well without this app if you're able to fund it for 18 months. Now you talked about how it's fascinating that the three of you were able to fund it the way you did. But from a personal point of view, how did you manage your financial runway from that point of view? Did you give yourself some space, some time in order to give the business everything it needed?
Uh, So we upfront had our budget for the company. We knew what we were putting in. We'd done the research to understand what we could get in terms of grant fronting from things like the LEO. Um, we'd mapped out a full business plan in terms of how we were going to execute on things. So we kind of knew where we stood. That was kind of cordoned off, and we were very much like, it either succeeds within this time frame, as in we take it to the next level, which is we're either generating enough revenue that we can actually bootstrap and move on, or we get funding to supplement that and allow us to expand and grow, or it fails. It was never just something that was going to just drag on and on and on, and we are going to just throw more and more money at it.
Mm.
Um, so it meant from a personal point of view that you could budget your lifestyle around that as well. So there was quite a few changes, obviously, in terms of day-to-day living expenses and managing how we managed our family, because in my circumstances anyway, we just had a baby and my wife had also just set up her own business.
Oh,
Yeah, you should probably have her on here. She was more successful than me. Her business is still running, mine's not. So
chalk it
um
down for next season. Yep.
there you go. So it was a huge amount of change personally, lifestyle wise, across the board. But it was also like there was definitely a wave of excitement that came with it. Like once we kind of got in, it was like, okay, Monday I'm starting. We're the new office. It's like, okay, what do you do on day one? It was there was a lot of enthusiasm in those early days, which was, I think, got us through the trepidation, the fears as well of, my God, my family could run out of money here. Like we might not be
Yeah.
able to pay rent. Um, I knew that, like the business, my family had a certain runway as well, for a period of time. So there was some comfort in that, but it just meant, in terms of spending, we had to go almost to zero on many fronts. So it was challenging.
And one more in that space though. Obviously you had you had some good open conversations with your wife about the decision here. Anyone else think this was the right thing, the wrong thing? Anyone try and talk you out of doing this?
Nobody tried to talk me out of it. Um, I had some conversations with people who were surprised because 12 years in a good job, stable. I would say there was probably more of a generational style discussions, which people perhaps wouldn't understand. Why would you want to go out and do this?
Yeah.
Why would you take all this risk on when you don't need to? Um, and I suppose the answer to that was, because if you don't do it now, you'll never do it. And therefore, this is the opportunity to go out and try something and learn something new and do something different. And it'll work out. Figure a way back. If the thing fails, which it inevitably did, not inevitably, but unfortunately it did,
Mm.
we'll find a way back. And we all, we'd frank discussions as well between the three of us. And I also had with my wife, which is like, look, I've got 12 years experience in Murex. I'll then have done a startup. I feel like that is a really strong story in terms of, another role potentially, in a scaling up company or in a fintech company somewhere. I feel like there'll be a positive outcome at the end, even if the thing doesn't succeed.
Interesting. That's an interesting way to think or consider the risk, as it were. And to come back to my favorite line of the whole podcast, which you tried to steal off me, you set up shop and day one diaries. What did you do once you were all there?
Yeah. I always distinctly remember, and it's funny when you talk about startups. I remember, like, and maybe it wasn't day one. It's blurred now at this stage, but it's in those early days. It was just like, who's building the website? And we just sat and we looked at each other, and I just went, okay, I'll give it a go. It wasn't as easy as it is today. You can spin up a website in minutes today. Back then, there was a lot of custom CSS styling. I'd never done that in my life before. So for the first little while, it was like, right, I'm building the website. So we designed it and we launched it. We got it live. We acquired the domain. And then we were like, what's the company called? And we bounced around on that for a while with different names. And again, changed domains a couple of times. So yeah, I always remember that as the moment of, well, you wanted to do a startup. This is a startup. Figure out how to build a website which people can register their interest on, capture their information and details, be able to, ship out marketing emails to them, set up a mailing list, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, so right now I'm doing marketing as well. So of the website set up, and suddenly it was like, well, how do we get people to come and see what we're doing? And it was like, well, we need to get people interested in this stuff. So we started doing content marketing, writing various articles to explain things. And the whole goal around what we are doing with the content marketing was, again, take topics where people like don't understand stuff and really provide a simple structure or framework, metaphor if you can, and just go, hey, this is what this thing is.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I was writing content articles and doing the research and figuring that stuff out. And at the same time building the product, and at the same time working on the finances with the guys, and at the same time starting to evolve our let's go and find somebody to give us money so that we've a longer runway. Um, but also let's build the product. Let's hire 2, 3 engineers and let's get this thing up and running and see what we can get built. And we did, and we hired someone that we knew and brought in a couple more people, and then it was basically yeah, all guns blazing after a month or so.
Wow. Wow. You really did hit the ground running. I think it's interesting, and we've heard this from other guests, where once you get into this world, there's this whole like, oh, someone else used to do that at the job I used to do. So I guess to your point, I have to make the website. I have to decide what kind of mouse I need, or a laptop, or I guess I'll have to put these desks together when they arrive. And there's anything and everything that just has to be done. Someone has to do it. So skipping along, then the business got going, and you started to form your product and shape the product into a bit more. How did you start getting customers, or what happened next?
So the original idea was essentially a B2C play. So we pretty much wanted to build an app that basically say, hey, Brian, here's everything for your finances to manage all your money. It's going to save you money every single month. We could show that to you. We could demonstrate it to you and let you see it working on a trial basis. And then you're going to pay a subscription to use it. We quite I won't say quite quickly, but we were heads down on the product for a while, but we definitely had moments where we realized, so we interviewed customers, we did workshop sessions with people, friends and family, pulled them into rooms, asked them to try out different things with the prototype. We also used our network to kind of connect to a lot of people and spoke to a lot of people and pitched the idea to people to get their feedback once we were kind of, publicly doing this. We couldn't do that while we were still working, obviously. Um, and our big realization, which probably, no epiphany, but B2C is really, really, really hard, and really expensive. Insofar as even if you can go out and tell somebody by paying €5 for this app a month, it's going to save you €50 a month, they won't pay for it. They want the free version. It's just the psychology of the freemium model that's taken over. You have to have something of really almost a fun value for people, like a Netflix, that they're willing to pay for, but pay for a finance app, they're just
Yeah.
not willing to do it. And it's that threshold we realize we're going to sink if we keep going down this road. Um, so we had a few come to Jesus meetings and discussions around what we could do, and we looked at who else is operating in the market, and the big pivot then that we made was like, well, actually, let's not sell this to individuals. Let's sell this to employers for financial well-being programs within their companies. So essentially, we go and we speak to the employer and say, you pay the subscription for all your employees on their behalf. It's a benefit for them. Think about the loyalty you get from that. The productivity goes up because you don't have people stressed out over their finances at work. They're happier because instead of constantly fighting to get more pay, they're actually starting to see that their finances are working for them and they're able to save every month and they can cover all their bills, as opposed to simply trying to solve the problem by get more money. So this went down quite well with a lot of companies when we spoke to them. Um, it was also a proven model in the US. There was a company actually doing this in the US similar to us, but we felt the product that we had built was far superior to what they had built. Um, but the biggest problem was working with corporates is a slow sales cycle. And that's where we started to run into problems.
So, like again, that makes a lot of sense, and I really like the idea, and it's not really one I had thought of, that if you are as a company have a staff who are now managing their money better, they're, as you said, less stressed, less worried, and maybe even less focused on, oh my God, I need to earn more, 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 if they're actually just doing better things with it. So another wise investment from a business. But yes, to your point, slow going talking to big business.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose what we had, our entry point into companies was through HR departments. Have to be very careful here. My wife's an ex-HR manager as well, so I get some leeway, but it just meant that there was different hurdles to get through. So HR were often not the decision makers. You had to get to somebody in the finance team. So even if HR really liked the product and wanted it, finance team were working with budgets that were constrained possibly in that year, so they would punch it to next year. You'd procurement, you'd so many different hoops to kind of get through going in through the HR department that the decision maker ended up being almost disparate.
Yeah.
You needed several people convinced. Ultimately, what we were looking at that point was our runway was running out. We had a couple of private investors and a couple of VCs who were interested in us since we pivoted to the B2B model. Um, but they were very much conditional on you need to sign a few customers and then we'll invest and try and bring the business to the next level. Um,
Right.
so that's where we ended up. And we had one major customer whose name will remain confidential, who were very enthusiastic and really kind of helped us a lot in terms of like bringing us along that track of like, we actually think we can do this across EMEA with you. So we went through all of the details of what they would need, and they had pretty much committed commercial terms, but dependent upon getting through the procurement process. There was no way we could afford it. It was as simple as that. To do everything they needed, we probably needed 8 months and €250,000 to be able to get to where we needed to get to, like from a system software security, data security perspective, certification perspective. So at that point, we just said it won't work. So
Yeah.
we took the decision to, rather than run it for another 3 months or so, to pull the plug and pay out the staff as best we could, to give them a bit of runway before they could get into their next job or whatever it was they were going
Yeah.
on to do. So yeah, tough decisions, but we kind of feel, and we've discussed it since then, we kind of feel we kind of made the right call, that
Yeah.
we would have been flogging a dead horse, which is unfortunate, but we feel like we took care of our staff, which is kind of was important to all of us from a values point of view.
And then for you personally, you've 12 years of Murex experience. You now have two 2 years, 3 years in your startup world.
Mhm. 2 years. We
And
were 2 years.
yeah, and then you're facing back out into the world. What was going through your mind, or what were your options?
Yeah, so we ended up part of an accelerator program with Accenture. So back then, Accenture had this accelerator program, and we actually met another company in there that were trying to set up a digital bank. So Revolut, Monzo style thing. Um, so we talked a few times actually, because we were kind of going, hey, if you get your digital bank off the ground and we have our money management application off the ground, there seems like a logical fit that we could somehow connect these two things here and bring a lot of what we have to the table in your world. Um, so he actually got accepted onto an accelerator in Denmark, of all places, and he invited two of us to come and join him. So I was in charge of product, and Key and the other guy was in charge of kind of tech engineering. Um, so he invited two of us to come and join him for a while in the startup in Denmark. So I spent, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, I think it was, flying up to Denmark for 2 weeks at a time, working with him almost like in a consultancy capacity. I happened to then, when I was up there, I was growing a little bit disenfranchised, as in I didn't think the direction that he was trying to take it was going to work. Um, I also think I possibly had a bit of startup fatigue at that stage, as in we'd been running at 100 miles an hour for 2 years, pushing up on
Yeah.
2.5 years now. Then I got a call from a recruiter I knew from my Murex days, and he was like, "There's a position in this company. It's a directorship. It's in Dublin. Small team, part of a much bigger company. What are your thoughts?" And so I just took a few calls, did a few interviews, and then got an offer, and just said, "Look, it's time for me to kind of go my separate ways." So I took that role, and started in Kobo, and I was there for 8 years.
Going in, let's say going into those interviews with the what some people may say the gap in the CV, as it were, but the startup experience, how did you feel about explaining that, or explaining the fact that it didn't end up being the unicorn that we all hoped for?
The interviews I found very comfortable. Having that experience, I think, in the startup just made me far more credible in terms of like, well, I can now provide an interface between different organizations. So when
Yeah.
product, engineering, marketing, sales, management are having these conversations and they don't speak the same language, I often found myself in the middle, because I was able to understand each of the different domains and how they kind of reflect with each other. So that, I think, in the interviews was something that really stood to me out of the startup. I don't think I may be wrong on this, but I don't think anybody judges you harshly for not succeeding in a startup.
Yeah.
Would be my opinion. Maybe it's because I've gone through it, but I wouldn't judge anyone. I think having the courage to try it, and even if you fail, I know for a fact that somebody else has learned a huge amount and has probably developed a lot of resilience in
Mhm.
terms of how to deal with crisis situations, how to deliver, how to get things over the line, how to put the level of effort in to make something happen. So I would kind of look at the outcome of a startup, if even if you failed, is you should have learned a huge amount from that experience in your life. So
Yeah, I think that tends to be the way it is, and I think that's one of those things. To your point, if you, like, say, if you were still in the Murex role, for example, or in my case being at Google for so long, you don't realize how much learning there is when you run your own business.
Mhm.
How many of those things you have to learn from, the resilience, the having to get up and continue on when you've had a tough day and a client has said no or whatever that is, but you still have 10 other things going. And like you say, the resilience, the capability to make good decisions and all that come with it. So it does end up making you a lot stronger and a lot better in terms of being a candidate going forward.
And I think I found anyway after my startup, you get to a world where you'd see people getting stressed over certain situations, and you'd be like, "No, dial it down a notch or two, because in the bigger picture of things, this is what this means."
Yeah,
Been able to kind of have that sense of like, this is not, we're running out of money and I can't pay rent next month, and I'm ringing the oil truck and kind of going, can you do a smaller delivery because we literally don't have money in our bank account to be able to pay for oil for heating for the house. Like, and that's where it kind of got to for us. We got to a point where it was like, right, because the company actually ran longer than we expected. We
yeah,
actually managed to get it further down the road in terms of runway. Um, but my personal finances weren't budgeted for the company running longer. So we got to a point where it was like, okay, we're literally going to run out of money in the next couple of months, which is also one of those reasons why I took that role. And I was like, okay, I actually just need to get back into the real world now
yeah.
and start covering things and paying for my life. So
Right. Well, Tim, you left the safe and comfortable confines of 12 years at Murex going out into the world of juggle. Are you happy that you went to do that?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely got more gray hair, um, catching up with you, for doing it. But as an experience, like, don't get me wrong, there were dark, dark times, and there was stress and there was difficulty, and we fought with each other and we fell out and we were friends again, and like it wasn't a straight line journey of any sort, and it ultimately failed. But
Yeah.
as an experience in terms of exposing you to things, learning things, building a network, having some stories to tell, was incredible. And like the reality is, you know, I went from a highly niche financial software company, Murex, into a startup and ended up working with an e-commerce company. There's no way in hell I would have gone from that niche financial company into an e-commerce company, because that makes no sense. Like, why would an e-commerce person, why would you know anything about e-commerce working in Murex? Um, so I don't think I'd ever got in that door without the experience of the startup, because all of a sudden, as I said to you earlier, the marketing experience, the attempts to sale, raising finances, all those things fit into that world of understanding e-commerce and how to sell to customers. And I think that then brought me on to the next level, which was like leading engineers. And then from that, that's brought me into a sort. So everything kind of happens for a reason, I suppose.
Excellent. It's so, so true. Well, Tim, I'll say a massive thank you. Thank you for sharing. It's been quite a trip down memory lane, and we really appreciate it. And not many people like to talk about those things, but it's really evident that it was a huge part of your life and a huge experience for you. So thank you very much for joining us on Day One Diaries.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, Brian.